Hello everyone, welcome to Study Bus. Today we will be talking about a very important chapter in class 6, that is the components of food. So if I talk about the food, the day-to-day activities that we do, we require energy for that, right? So if I'm to speak, if I'm going to run, if I'm going to walk, or if I'm going to do any kind of day-to-day activities, I would be basically requiring energy to do that work, right? And how do I get this energy? That is through the food. Okay, so food is very important for us, right? So in our today's video, we will be discussing about what is food made up of. Okay, we will be knowing about some basic terminologies in food, importance of the nutrients, balanced diet, deficiency diseases, and how do we identify the food that we consume have the different nutrients and how can we actually test this nutrients, and then finally we are going to summarize what we have learned today. So talking about the basic terminologies, food, as I said, we need it to, as it gives us energy to do the work, right? And if I talk about food, food is nothing but it is any substance that is consumed to provide the nutritional support for an organism. Okay, so whether it's plant, animal, anything for that matter requires the food, right? And if I talk about the food, okay, let's say if I'm talking about the rice and dal that we have, right? So in this, there are basically ingredients, right? To make the dal, for example, I would need the tur dal, then I would add some tomato, salt, the spices, and then I'm going to give it a tadka, right? So whatever things are required to make this food is what we call as ingredients. And this ingredients also consists of nutrients, which are very essential for the proper functioning of our body. Okay, so that's basically about the food. And talking about what is this nutrition, I'm talking a lot about nutritional support for an organism, right? What is a nutrition? Nutrition is nothing but it's a process of taking the food and converting it into energy, right? Ultimately, we are eating the food for the energy. If the food gets converted into energy, okay, that process is what we call as the nutrition. Okay, and there are various components in the food. Okay, mainly if I talk about the nutrients that are there, there are two nutrients. One is the major nutrient, as the name indicates, major, or we can also call it as macronutrients. Okay, it is the macronutrients. This is required in large amounts. For example, we have the carbohydrates, proteins, and the fats are the ones which we require in large amount. Apart from that, there are minor nutrients, or we can also call it as micronutrients. Micro or minor, that means small, right? We require them in smaller quantities. Okay, so that is what we call as the minor nutrients. For example, vitamins and minerals. These are required in small quantity. Okay, then like I said, the components in our food are, apart from this nutrients that are there, like carbohydrate, proteins, fats, vitamins, and minerals. Another important component of our food is dietary fibers, or also we can call it as the roughage. Okay, and also water is also a very essential component in our food. Talking about the balanced diet, what is this balanced diet basically? Okay, is it the diet that we hear nowadays? No, that's not right. So the balanced diet is a diet or the food which basically contains adequate amount of all the nutrients. So whatever the nutrients that I have talked about, like carbohydrates, proteins, fats, vitamins, and minerals, along with the dietary fibers and water, should be in a adequate amount or in a proper proportion. Okay, so that is what we call as the balanced diet. And if I talk about anything excess is not good for health, right? Apart from that, anything which is less and we are not taking it up, that leads to the deficiency of that particular nutrient in our body. It results in lack of or insufficiency or shortage of that particular nutrient. We will be discussing about all this, but before going ahead, I just wanted you all to know about the basic terminologies that we are going to use in this chapter. Okay. Then there will be the deficiency diseases. As we got to know that deficiency is nothing but it's because of lack of or the insufficiency or the shortage of a particular nutrient, right? So the diseases that are caused because of the lack of the essential nutrients over a long period in our body is what we call as the deficiency diseases. Okay, so now that we have understood about this basic terminologies in the components of the food, we are going to discuss in a nutshell about all of this nutrients. What is the importance of these nutrients, right? Now I'm talking about the foods, then I'm talking about the nutrients that are there. Why do we have to take that nutrients? That is the main question, right? So we need to know the importance of this nutrients. Okay, so starting with the first nutrient, okay, that is the carbohydrates. Okay, so carbohydrates and fats, if I talk about, they give energy to our body. Fats, they in fact give more energy than the carbohydrate. Okay, so they are also called the energy giving food. Okay, so that's basically about the carbohydrate. Fats, in fact, if I talk about the fats, we also call them as body building foods. Okay, and then proteins is another important nutrient, right? So this is needed for the growth and repair of our body. These are also called the body building foods. Okay, and then we have the vitamins, which help in protecting our body against the diseases. And minerals, they are required for the proper growth of our body. Okay, so now that we have talked about these nutrients, what in which food items we get this nutrients the maximum. So if I talk about the carbohydrates are present in rice, wheat, potato, bread, right? So these are the food which has large amount of carbohydrate in it. Okay, so fats, if I talk about, it is present in the oil, ghee, butter. Then talking about the proteins are present in excess amount in eggs, meat, pulses. So these are the foods that are rich in proteins. And the food that are rich in vitamins are the fruits and the vegetables. Vitamins and minerals are present mostly in the fruits and the vegetables. Okay. Apart from that, we include the raphe or the fibers also in our food, right? And what is the use of it? If I talk about the raphe or the water, it does not give any nutrient. It does not give any nutrient to our body, but it is very important It is very important component of our food because Rafe is going to help us in getting rid of the undigested food. And the water is going to help in absorbing this nutrients that are there in the food and also throwing out the waste from our food body in the form of the urine and sweat. So this is basically about the components of the food. Okay, so we have learned now about the importance of the nutrients, right? And also, what are the food items which has this food? So if you remember, I was saying that, eggs, meats, or pulses. Okay, so these are basically the foods that are rich in proteins. What do I mean by this rich in proteins? It just means that, see, if I talk about any food item, let's say if I'm talking about eggs, okay, it does not mean that it only contains proteins. It has the other nutrients also, but the maximum amount is the protein. That is with respect to any food if I talk about. Even if it is rice, rice will not contain only carbohydrate. No, it will also have the other nutrients, but maximum will be the carbohydrates. Okay, so this is about the importance of the nutrients. Now talking about the balanced diet, right? So if I talk about a balanced diet, we hear this word a lot, right? Diet nowadays. I am on a diet. I am on a diet and all of that. Okay. So this diet is completely different from the balanced diet. Okay. So balanced diet is nothing but the diet which will contain a good amount of all the nutrients in proper proportion. Okay, so that is when we call it as a balanced diet. Okay, it should contain proper amount of carbohydrate. It should also contain the proteins, fats, vitamins and minerals, as well as the fibers. We should also take the food that is rich in fibers. Okay, so all this components that are there for the food, this should be there in the adequate amount or the proper proportion. Okay, so that is when we say that it is a balanced diet. Okay, do not confuse with the diet that you hear nowadays and the balanced diet. Okay, and for the healthy and the proper functioning of our body, we should take all the nutrients in proper proportion. It should not happen like, like I'm only eating the proteins or I'm only eating the carbohydrates, because anything in excess would lead to diseases again, right? So if I'm going to have a lot of fats, it will result in obesity, right? Now, like I said, if we are going to have anything in excess, it will trouble our body, right? So in the same way, if we have any nutrient in the less amount, that would lead to deficiency. Okay, so now about the deficiency. Okay, so if, see, vitamins are very important for our body, right? Deficiency of vitamin A. There are different types of vitamins like A, B, C, D, K. Okay, but here we will be talking about this vitamins and their deficiency. Okay, so if I talk about the vitamin A, okay, so this is the deficiency of vitamin A results in loss of vision or night blindness. Okay, so the symptoms include poor vision, loss of vision in darkness, that's the night blindness, or sometimes complete loss of vision. Vitamin B results in deficiency, and the disease that is associated with the deficiency of vitamin B is beriberi. What are the symptoms of this? Symptoms are nothing but What are the characteristics, I would say? Okay, let's say if I'm talking about if I'm going to get the fever, I'll be having some symptoms about this, right? Like body pain, maybe my nose would be runny if I'm going to have cold, right? So these are nothing but the symptoms. And the vitamin C, the deficiency of vitamin C results in scurvy, and the symptoms include bleeding gums and wounds would take longer to heal. Okay, and the deficiency of vitamin D results in a disease called rickets, and this is associated with the bones. Okay, so bones are going to become soft and bent. Okay, and calcium deficiency results in bone and tooth decay, weak bones. Okay, and the deficiency of iodine results in the goiter. And iodine is important for the proper functioning of the thyroid gland. And if it is not functioning properly, it would result in the disease called goiter. Okay, so goiter is nothing but it's the gland in the neck up. It is going to be there. Okay, and this also sometimes lead to mental disability in the children. Iron deficiency, very common these days. Okay, so this deficiency results in a disease called anemia. Okay, and the symptoms include weakness. Okay, so this are basically about the deficiency. Now, talking about the deficiency, what should we do, to have a good amount of vitamins, right? So, vitamin A, okay, if there is vitamin A, the doctor would, deficiency of vitamin A, the doctor would recommend us to eat a lot of papaya, carrot, mango. These are the food items which basically which are the rich sources of vitamin A. Okay, and if I talk about the vitamin B, okay, so this is mostly present in the liver, rice, as well as the wheat. Okay, the sources of vitamin C are oranges, lemon, amla. Okay, and vitamin D, the fish. Okay, as well as the milk. Okay, so these are basically going to be rich sources of the vitamin D. Talking about the minerals, like these are the vitamins. Okay, and about the minerals, the calcium. Okay, so calcium is basically present in milk. That's why we are asked to have milk, to have the stronger bones. Okay, so iodine, if I talk about, it is mostly present in the ginger, peas also. Okay, apart from that, our salt that we consume, it is actually not having the iodine, but we actually add the iodine to it. Okay, so then the iron is present in the palak or spinach, we call. Okay, so apart from that, the apples. Okay, so these are some of the sources, the vitamins and the minerals. Okay, so this is about the deficiency diseases. Now that we have talked about all of the nutrients, let's also understand how do we identify that, this is a particular uh, nutrient that is there in this food. Okay, so to identify the starch, okay, so we are going to take the raw food. Okay, so in this case, we have taken the bread. Okay, so to this food, we are going to add the iodine solution. Okay, to test the starch, we perform the test called iodine test. Okay, so if you're going to add the iodine to it, the color, if there is the presence of the starch in it, this will convert into blue-black color. Okay, so this indicates the presence of starch. Okay, so this is how we can determine the presence of the starch. Apart from that, if I have to determine the protein, presence of the protein, okay, So what are we going to do is we are going to take the food item. Okay, so as you can see over here, okay, so we have grinded the food item in the water. Okay, and then we are going to take it in a test tube. We are going to add few drops of copper sulfate solution. We are going to shake it well, okay, by closing the test tube. And then we are going to add the caustic soda to the test tube. And then we are going to stand for some time. Okay, so wait for some time. And if we are going to observe a violet color, this is going to indicate the presence of the proteins. Okay, and now how do we determine the fat? Okay, so what we are going to do is we are going to do it by the patch test. Okay, so what we are going to do is we are going to take a small quantity of food item, wrap it in a piece of paper. Okay, and then we are going to straighten the paper, and then if we are going to see after some time, we are going to see if there is a patch that is there or if it turns translucent. Okay, so if the paper turns translucent, that is the indication of fat, presence of fat in that particular food item. Okay, so if you remember, I had told that salt will not contain the iodine, right? Instead, we add the iodine to it. Okay, in the same way, okay, so there are some fortified foods. Okay, so what do I mean by these fortified foods? These are basically as per the standard of FSSAI. Okay, and fortification is nothing but addition of essential vitamins and minerals to the staple food like the rice, wheat, oil, milk, and salt, so that those particular nutrient requirements that are required for our body are met. Okay, so that's all from this chapter. So if I were to summarize this chapter, so we have talked about the food, right? Food consists of ingredients, and the ingredients are having the nutrients, right? And how can we classify the nutrients? The nutrients can be classified as macronutrients and micronutrients. Macronutrients are the carbohydrates, proteins, fats, and the micronutrients are the vitamins and the minerals. Apart from these nutrients, the food also contain the other components. What are they? Raphe as well as water. This raphe and water, they do not provide any nutrients to us, but they are very important component of food because raphe helps in removal of undigested food, and water is required for the absorption of nutrients from the food that we eat, and also to remove the waste from our body in the form of sweat and urine. This is all about the components of the food. Apart from that, we have also talked about the deficiency diseases. Right? So the deficiency of vitamin A results in the loss of vision, and the vitamin B results in beriberi. Deficiency of vitamin C results in scurvy, which deficiency of D results in rickets, right? As well as we have also talked about the deficiency diseases that are associated with the minerals as well, right? Like calcium is very important, right? Deficiency of this leads to the bone diseases, right? Bones and all become weak. Okay, so apart from the deficiency of iron will result in the anemia. Okay, and the deficiency of iodine will result in a disease called goiter. Okay, so these are the deficiency diseases. Apart from that, how did we identify these nutrients? That is by performing some tests, right? So for carbohydrate, it was the iodine test, right? So protein, we basically took added the copper sulfate solution, right? Apart from that, we also added the caustic soda, and fats were determined by the oil patch test. So this is all about the chapter components of food. I hope you liked the video. Do follow, like, share, and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video. Bye.